Welcome, I'm Sara, the Canine Family Planner. This is the 9th Sara's Weekend Weekly Summary, which is crazy that I've been doing this for 3 months. Hello to everybody that's joined me so far. So Charlotte, Sharon, Tracy, good to see you, some of my regulars, Jill also. So I'm going to crack on because I've got quite a meaty subject I want to talk about after I go through my usual spiel of updates this week. So scans have been quiet actually. I've been really busy with bloods and busy with matings, but on the scan front, a Labrador I scan with 6, a Datsy I scan with 7/8, so they're going to be crazy busy. I had a lady call me in a minor panic because her bulldog was 40+ days having bloody discharge, and she was just concerned that something was going on. So we actually run progesterone bloods with her. I think I previously mentioned it, where progesterone needs to stay elevated to maintain a pregnancy, and if that level drops, then they can possibly abort the puppies or reabsorb them into the body. So she was a bit worried that that might be happening, especially with a bulldog. They're kind of prone to those kind of crazy things. Anyway, we scanned them. Pups all fine, jiggling about, good heartbeats, developing well, just starting to form bones, so pups look fine. And we also run the bloods and they come back fine as well. She was over 28. So I said, some breeds do just spot all the way through, so the French bulldogs are kind of known for it. So I said, if I was you, just put her on a short course of antibiotics, just monitor her. If it doesn't, like, she's healthy in herself and well in herself, assume that all is fine. It's just one of those things. But everything come back fine, so that put her, well, give her peace of mind basically. I've had another bulldog with bloods, and we did an AI yesterday, and we're doing another one tomorrow. And I did a lab AI as well. I didn't run the bloods on that one. Mrs. We've had a bulldog who I did do bloods for. She previously had a litter of only 3, which was fairly unusual because I think I ran the bloods then. She's actually quite a large bitch, so generally the longer the bitch, the easier they carry their litter, because the longer the horns that they have to carry the pups in, the urine horns are longer. Generally a bitch will only carry what they're physically capable of carrying, though obviously there's always an exception to the rule. You can have a small bitch carry a fairly big litter and a big bitch carry a small litter. But she was quite a long bitch. All her bloods weren't anything crazy. And she only had 3 in her first litter, and I scanned her with a miss. Now I've just got a feeling, and I'm going to come on to a pug also that I scanned with a miss, and she was the same. She had only 3 pups in her first litter and only 1 survived, and then I've scanned her with a miss. And I've just got a feeling there's this pattern of, if they have a smaller than average first litter and then they start getting misses, that it could be their progesterone levels just aren't high enough, which I think when they had their previous litter they were younger, and just as they're getting older the hormone levels are just fluctuating a bit more, so they're tailing off a bit more. So I recommended to both of those. The lady with the pug, she's not going to try her again anyway, so that's it, game over. But with the bulldog, personally, she was mine. I would do all the same that she did before because she did all the correct things. But 2 weeks after mating, I would do a progesterone blood test, and I've just got a feeling that this girl is going to be a low level, and that they're going to need to top her up. The lady with the border collie that I mentioned previously, she's it's not 2 weeks yet, so I'll be interested to see, and I'll update you all if she's a low level 2 weeks afterwards, because she's one of those, had a small litter and then missed all the times afterwards. So I'll keep you updated, but I think maybe going forward this might be something that if you're a proactive breeder, that you might want to start doing, is just doing a blood test 2 weeks afterwards, just to check that the numbers staying elevated. Obviously there's a whole bigger issue of like from a stockman point of view, you only really want to breed from the healthiest, because you end up tying yourself up in knots. So say you did have a female and her progesterone was dropping off and you started supplementing her, what you don't know is if you then keep a female, is she then going to have the same problems, and then are you like just going to make it worse. So you just snowballing the problem. But maybe if it's your last of the bloodline that you've got, and it's a really important litter, then you're going to go to those ends, or you're not planning to keep anything, then you might want to do that. But it's definitely something just to be conscious of. So that's just the updates of what I've been up to. So last week I did do this live earlier because I had to do my own mating. So I'm going to explain a bit about that and then come on to co-ownership, because then what I realised is that I've mated my own dog to my own bitch, but neither of them live with me. So I thought you might ask me a few questions. But this female, well, basically I loaned a dog to France, one of my stud dogs, well, my main stud dog I've ever had, really, my most successful stud dog to France. And the guy that I loaned him to looked after him amazing. He only went for 3 months, and it's not anything I usually do, but I really put a lot of trust in him, and he looked after the dog amazing. Anyway, as a thank you, he gave me a female back. The problem, and she was a nice female, the problem I had was I was showing another bitch of the same age, and what would happen and what you'll find in the show ring is if you win with one, then you probably won't win with the other. It's all right if you show one dog and one bitch, but if you start showing two of the same sexes, you just generally won't win with both of them. So I was winning with one but not with the other, and vice versa. So I actually decided that bitch I would put out on breeding terms. I would co-own with somebody if I found the right person. Now, I've previously had history of this, and it's worked quite well for me. So I'm going to go through the things you need to do, why it's worth doing, but the things you need to consider to safeguard yourself. Because generally, if you talk about co-ownership in the dog world, like, people are either like, no, it's the worst thing in the world, don't do it, or they're going, actually, I've never had a problem with it. If it's done properly, it can save you a lot of bother, but we'll come on to that. But as I say, only ask any questions as we go. So with this female, I'd put her out on breeding terms. She had her first litter. She had a litter of 9, all straightforward, no dramas. Mated her again. She actually missed, but I probably previously mentioned it. I put her to an 8-year-old stud dog who I've used before, never had any problems, a really lovely male. He actually missed the bitch before her and her. Even though we sperm checked him and it all looked amazing, I just feel that as he's got older, it's just become a bit more fragile. And what happen is his pH level of his semen's probably changed and become more alkaline. So when you put that into a bitch, she's more acidic, it just dies. It just hasn't got like the vitality to live in that environment and then fertilise the eggs. So though the dog is good, under the scope is good, he's a really healthy, for a bulldog, shown way beyond the average age of the bulldog. So there's nothing against the male, because I know what it's like when people have misses, they start pointing fingers at the male. This is not the case at all. It's just that it's just happened with age, and it is what it is, you know. So what I thought was, well, actually, I've already used that stud dog before, so why don't I put this bitch to the son that I've already bred, that's out of my champion bitch, and the dog that I used was a champion. So I'm like, well, why am I making life difficult for myself? I'll use my own male. Now, this male is also co-owned, so I'll give you a bit of background as to why. So I bred my champion bitch. She only had 3 in her first litter. One puppy went to Brazil, which we can talk about exporting dogs and whatnot on another day. One puppy went to Brazil. I kept a bitch, and she's still with me now, and then he was the only male, so I thought, well, I'm going to keep this male to keep my bloodlines going, because he's champion parents on both sides, health tested, you know, why would I not keep him, basically. Had a great tail, which for the breed, we're trying to breed in tails, so I thought he needs to stay. Unfortunately, what he did was damage his eye, and as a puppy, started taking him to Ringcraft, and then by 4 months old, we was up the emergency vets because he nearly lost his eye. We had his eyes stitched shut numerous times, and we basically saved his eye, but he has full-on scar tissue across it, so it's a really heavily scarred eye. So obviously this isn't hereditary, because it was trauma, it's an accident that caused it, but it also meant that I could no longer show him. That wasn't an option for me to keep him. Well, it was an option, I couldn't show him. So then I thought, well, I'm keeping a male that I can't show, and probably stud work's going to be limited now because he hasn't had the exposure in the show ring, and also to look at, people might think, oh, well, what's up with his eye? But I didn't want to sell him on because I wanted the line. So what I decided is, for me, I would co-own him. So he's the only male that I co-own. Generally, I co-own only females for their breeding capacity, but because of him and his characteristics, I didn't want to pet home him, and then I never had that opportunity to come on his bloodlines. So fortunately, he found somebody that was suitable. It was actually a friend of the family, and she's had him ever since and does a great job with him. And so it's given me the flexibility. Some people have used him for stud. He's sired, I don't know, say 5-6 litters, if not more. I've used him myself previously, so he's actually been a really well, he's just ticked all the boxes basically. He's just been a really good dog to use. Bloodline wise, he's done everything I needed to do. So I thought, well, okay, let's mate my bitch to him. Now, obviously, breeding is hard enough when it's your own bitch and you're trying to do the logistics of tying in the stud dog and availability and getting to here and getting to there. So obviously, I'm mating 2 dogs. The bitch lives 40 minutes from me, and the stud dog lives an hour from me in 2 opposite directions. So we blood tested, which is all good, because when you're dealing with distances and 2 different parties, it's the best way to be. Obviously, I can blood test because that's what I advocate anyway as a breeder. First blood to come back, she was low, and actually I decided that, well, I felt that I should complete my puppy playbook and play this out as everybody should do if they've got one of these. So I filled in all her first details there, all about her chip number, and when she was last when she was last in season, date of birth, her weight, all that kind of stuff. And this has been good for another reason. But her first bloods on day 7 were 2.97, and then her second bloods on day 9 was 7.78. So that confirmed ovulation, and we mated her 2 days after. And fortunate enough, I was just going to go and pick up the stud dog. She's actually a little bit, not nervy, she's just a little bit hesitant really when she's not in her own environment. So what I thought I would do is just keep stress at a minimal to her, because obviously I can do the AI as well. So I thought I'll pick up the dog, take the dog to the bitch, which generally isn't the usual practice. I think I mentioned this before, sort of tradition is that the bitch goes to the dog, but now people are doing AI more, that's less relevant. So I thought I'll pick the dog up, I'll take the dog to the bitch, do the AI, and then drop him back again, no drama. And he performs anywhere, so it doesn't bother him, and obviously he's used to me. Lucky enough, the owner of him was actually halfway coming towards me. They're actually going to the cinema. So what we had agreed was for me to pick up the dog from the cinema, for me to drive to the bitch, do the AI, and then get back to the cinema all in time for them to have watched The Hustle that's got Jennifer Lopez in. So I was on a super tight time scale, and I made it. I was a little bit late, but we did make it, so that was all good. But yeah, so he's easy enough to handle. We did the AI. Amy's all fine, she's at home, no drama to her. So obviously I'll update you more when I scan her. But A, that shows the importance of blood testing. B, the flexibility of having 2 owners, 2 dogs in co-ownership, and then being fully understanding. But also, when we filled in the playbook, they're just Amy's blood testing print-offs there, I've just stapled on. But this was really good because obviously, because Amy doesn't live with me, some of the stuff just doesn't register in my brain, because I don't have to deal with her vaccinations or worming or any of that kind of stuff. The way that my co-ownerships work is that they're very much that person's dog and responsibility. But we'll come on to that in a minute. But I thought, no, I filled this out because I've designed it, so I better keep to my word. And then I was like, oh, hang on, when was she last wormed? Now, typically, when it's my bitches, I worm them first day of season, and then I don't do any worming until pups are born. I don't even worry about it. And I've never really had a major problem with that. What became apparent is that her worming wasn't up to date. So what I've decided to do with her, we could have left her till 40 plus days, and then the vets say do the panicure. I think it's like every day until pups are born, or for a week or whatever. But I would preferably not do that, because I don't really like putting chemicals into bitches when I don't really need to. So, well, unless I have to, basically. So what we decided is that we were going to worm count her, and my weekly email, anyone that's on my email list, that email that goes out on Monday will give you the full lowdown as to what that's all about. But basically, we're going to worm count her. If she's got worms, then we're going to treat them. Otherwise, we're going to leave her be. So rather than just assuming she's got worms and worming her, we're actually going to make the effort to find out first. But as I say, Monday's email will cover that. But we've done all of this. She's on the folic acid. We've got a scan date from the 28th of October, so I'll keep you posted then. All right, but just to say, I've also filled in the other side, all of William's details, his coefficient, the litter's coefficient. He hasn't had a litter for 2 years, but I have sperm checked him because I can again, and he's all good. So he's I'm not going to jinx it, but he's always been super fertile. So we'll see how he goes. So what else did I think? Oh, and I've also filled in the whelping chart, so I know that she's due around, if she takes, around the 29th of October, because this is super easy to work out. And actually pups are ready for new homes 29th of January, which is why next week I'm going to talk about selling pups at Christmas. And Jill Cranfield, a lovely lady that she is, has sent me an email about it. So I'm going to make sure I mention what she talked about and my opinions next week. And obviously it's for everybody to chip in. But basically, so that's the update on what I was up to, me running around like a headless chicken. Is there anything you want to ask me? What's this say? So Ollie says we need to scan in 3 weeks. Yeah, so Ollie actually mated his bitch the same day as me. And he actually he's mated his William daughter, who's the stud dog I've used. So I actually sent frozen semen to Ollie in Norway, and it was all successful. He had a lovely litter. Some of the pups have done really well in the show ring. He kept a bitch, and weirdly enough, daughter and dad had mating on the same day, so we both got our fingers crossed. Yeah, Charlotte used William, yeah, my big old Willie, as I normally call him. But yeah, so that's me, update on me and what I'm doing, and I'll keep you posted. Hopefully I haven't jinxed myself like previous times, but it is what it is. So let's talk about co-ownership and why it might be good for you, why it's not. Shannon Cornford, I don't know whether she's on or not, but I've actually interviewed Shannon because she's a dog groomer. And I haven't released that audio yet, but she's a dog groomer, she's a breeder, and she does co-ownership. She calls it guardianship, and I think she actually takes it to the next level as well, which we'll touch on. But in regards to co-ownership, so it can work for male or females. Generally, people tend to do it with females because they're the ones that are going to rear a litter. It's less prominent with a male because generally you go and use a male at stud. So for you to keep a male and then put it out on terms, you need to know that you're going to get that like benefit from doing that, you know, the cost of what it's going to be, rather than selling the dog and using that money to then just pay a stud fee. So generally it is with females, but there's no right or wrong to whether it's with a male as well. So from a breeder's point of view, it helps you continue your bloodline without you having a crazy number of dogs in your house. So for me, I'm quite strict. I used to say my maximum is 6 dogs. I think I had 7, if not 8 at one point. I've only got 5 at the moment. And I always say the Frenchie is only half a dog, so I've only got 4.5 really. But I have got 3 dogs out that I co-own. William, the male that I talked about, Amy, and another female called Nellie, and actually she's a daughter of my champion bitch. So it just gives me flexibility without having to have a house full of dogs. I can still continue my bloodline, I can still continue my breeding program. Now, what it also means is that I generally don't sell ex-brood bitches. my history of how I come into dogs was that as a family we had rescued ex-brood bitches, and unfortunately they were very neglected dogs that didn't live very long lives with us. Not saying that anybody that breeds this day and age does that to their dog. This is, 30 years ago, but it's just something in my ethics. Dogs for me are first pet dogs, and then it's a bonus that I can breed for them, show them and all the rest of it. So for me the home is more important than me having 2 litters out of her, or 3 litters or 4 litters or whatever you do, and then rehoming them. So for me, it removes any ethical issues I have about breeding dogs and then passing them on to somebody else. Now, I know obviously there's breeding kennels, and if your dogs are in kennels, that actually it's fair, it's fairer for the dog to then, have your plans of breeding, and then for that dog to go and live on somebody's sofa and be spoilt rotten. So I'm not saying don't do it, but for me, that's a reason why I choose co-ownership over ex-brood bitches, rehoming ex-brood bitches. I'd rather that dog be in that home for all its life, so they leave me at 8 weeks old, and that's their owners, and they love that family and who they're with, just on the conditions that every now and then I have the dog back, we have a litter, and then she goes back to carrying on life as usual, and she'll be there from 8 weeks old until she's old and grey. So for me, that's just a personal preference, but it just gives you some flexibility. So what can go wrong? And as I say, ask any questions as we go, but so what can go wrong? And you will hear horror stories. And I think even Judge Rinder has had cases on there of co-ownership that's gone wrong. So I'm quite a stickler for paperwork. You need to have it written down in black and white what the conditions are of this person having this dog in co-ownership. And what you also need to do is bury down a bit deeper as to what that person's motivations are. So how are you going to find the right person to have your dog in co-ownership? Now, where it can go wrong, it can be down to the new person, the owner, taking the dog, and they decide to change their mind. They don't want the dog to have a litter. They don't want to meet their obligations of what you've agreed to. So it means the situation is going to go wrong quite quickly. You need to think about, does the owner understand the importance of telling you when they're in season? Because you'll be surprised how many just like to forget. So you need to emphasise when that dog is day 1 of season, you need to tell me. And personally, I would always make sure that you are progesterone blood testing bitches that are co-owned, because they only need to forget to tell you, and then 5 days later let you know, and you're thinking that's day 1 when it's not, it's already day 6. So for me, they need to know the importance of the season, what the protocol is, how they contact you, and for personally I would be progesterone blood testing just to confirm what they're saying is true. And also, if the agreement can't be completed, now there might be many reasons for this, such as they changed their mind, the bitch is barren, you've bred from her pups, all the litter died. What happens in those instances? And you don't want to fall out. Everybody needs to be on the same page and the same understanding of what this agreement is and why it's set up as it is. And I very much said to people, so there is no hard and fast rule, and this is where it was interesting because Shannon's is very different to mine. I've sent people have asked me, said, oh, what can you let me know what your contract says? And I've just sent them a copy. But I've always said to them, this isn't hard and fast. You need to find out what the person's motivations are, because that will change the conditions. Generally, I've always given the dog for free on the conditions that the bitch has 2 litters, but then it even changes. So if I'm rearing the litters, then it's generally 50-50. If they're rearing the litter, if they're rearing the litter, it's generally 50-50 on the pups. I pick first, they pick second, it's alternate. If it's a odd number or whatever, I get that extra pup if it ticks over, okay? If I was to rear the litter, then it might be the case that they get every 3rd pup, but you need to understand the motivations even then of offering that as a possible something they might be interested in. So let me just look at the messages. Yeah, so Jill saying Mango arrives back to me on Thursday. She's due a litter on Tuesday. So Jill has her bitch actually lives with her daughter. So I don't know, have you got a written contract? I doubt between family, not that you probably shouldn't, but that's down to you. Obviously family's different, but I generally friends, anyone that you been recommended, it's not anything I personally would say advertise. You kind of want to find these people naturally for consideration. What's what they say, divorces or split ups maybe. Yeah, the biggest problem, co-ownerships. Yeah, so what happens if somebody takes a couple take the dog and then they split up? Where does the dog go? Should it come back to you? Are they going to keep up with the new commitments, the contracts? So exactly, all those kind of things need to be considered. I took your advice. That's how I do co-ownership. Yeah, so I'll probably send Charlotte a copy of my certificate, but it is one of those, it all depends on the person. So you need to find out their motivation, okay? And this is where most people go wrong. So I've defined it into 3 categories, basically. The first is they want the dog, they can't afford the dog, so this is an option. This is a way that they can get a really nice, healthy, bred dog without having to cough up the pennies. Now, this has happened. There's people like this exist. There's no right or wrong. I'm not here to judge people as to why they want to go into co-ownership or not. But you need to know if that's the case, okay? Because when it comes to, can they afford the dog long term, the feeding, the vet bills, insurance and that kind of stuff? If you get somebody like that, you just need to know that they can afford the ongoing costs. And then you need to think about vet bills. Who pays for what? Okay, so for me, when I put a bitch on terms, that dog is their dog. Any day-to-day running costs, they are accountable for it. Anything that's involved with the breeding costs, then that's when we are either I'm paying for it or we're going 50-50. Now, my personal preference is that everything goes 50-50 because they have as much to lose as you then. So they're invested in the contract as much as you. If it's swung one way or the other, then the investment might not be the same. But I feel if you're 50-50, then you're like, I'm losing as much as you. You know, no one's winning in this situation. The other way I've identified a person is that they want mentoring. So actually, Amy, who I've bred, went to Natasha. She was new into showing and she wanted mentoring. She wanted to start her own line, and that's how she ended up coming to have Amy. She actually had a son of my stud dog, a different stud dog, the one I loaned to France. She already had a son that she bought from a breeder, you know, won his class at Crufts and that kind of thing. So she wanted to get the ball rolling on establishing her own line and her own kennel name, and that's why we decided, yep, she could have Amy, we'll go to shows together. She's handling Amy in one class, I'm handling my other dog in another class. It's going to work really well. So I've mentored Natasha all through that litter, and she done a great job. 9 pups on her first litter, so she reared the litter, okay then. So it's again slightly different avenue to come from, but she reared all the litter. She's done an amazing job, but that's what her motivations were. And the other is that somebody wants a dog to earn the money. Oh, should I say stuff like that? But it's true. So somebody might go, I want the dog because I want the dog, obviously not just to earn the money, but their motivation is that actually if I have this dog on terms, when she has pups, I get some money. And if they're not rearing the litter, you're doing it, then it means they get some quite easy money, really. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you've agreed, they get every third pup and you sell the pup and you give them the money and they're super happy with it, that's fine. They've met to their obligation, that they told you she was in season, you got her in pup, they've done everything they should do. There isn't anything wrong with that. But like I say, depending on their motivation will depend what type of contract you want to draw up with them and how it might be split. The vet, so people like that, they might not want to pay any of the associated vet bills because it's going to cost them money and they don't know what they're doing. They're not really interested. They just want to own a dog, and this was a convenient way for them to get a dog. Okay, so you need to know what their motivations are to what and how you draw up your contract. And I've done different. So I said it's not hard and fast. So I've had terms where I've reared the litter. I've had terms where they've reared the litter. I've had generally, I only breed my litters, bitches twice anyway. It's up to them if they were to then decide to have a third litter. I keep all paperwork until that bitch the contract has been agreed, then if it's Kennel Club paperwork, which for me it is because I only breed Kennel Club dogs because I show them, only then when the contract is completed will the dog be signed over to them. But I don't hold that over them. That their dog is their dog. I know Shannon, she gets a lot more involved, so I believe she pays their insurance, she pays their ongoing vet bills, she literally pays everything. But I imagine that when she gets the dog back to breed, that whole litter's hers. Okay, so they're doing really well because they've probably got a discounted or free dog, and then they've paid no ongoing bills. So I think a lot of people would like dogs like that. So it's to say, it really does depend on their motivations. But I'm just going to look at the comments because it's in a few flash up. So Jill said no, she hasn't got a contract with your daughter. I think that's fair enough. Yeah, she understands. She wanted 2 litters from her and then she'd be spayed. Yep. So Charlotte did every third pup with a written contract. She has a litter and now it's their dog. Okay, so did you just do it on 1 litter, Charlotte? Tracy saying, do you pay for vaccination sections? How's the money split from selling the pups? Okay, so as I've said 1,000 times, I'm a stickler for a spreadsheet. So I literally log every expense that's breeding related. If it's split 50-50, how much each of us have paid, that gets deducted from any sale of the puppies. And they can see I obviously do sales paperwork, so I'm not saying I've sold a puppy for X amount and lied to them. They can see a copy of all the receipts. This is my amount, this is your amount. I keep everything really open, really transparent. I'm not hiding anything. I've even had it, I think with Natasha, we had actually 1 pup left over, which I was amazed at because she was a stunning puppy and she's turned into a stunning bitch. But we had 1 puppy that we had less interested in, so we dropped the price from her. So we had to jointly agree, because I think that pup, I think it might have been her pup, we had to jointly agree, are you happy to drop this price to sell it? Otherwise it comes to a point when a puppy over 8 weeks, they're going to cost you money because you're feeding them. So it's, for me, I find it better personally just to drop the price and let them get to the new home than to run them on, stand fast on your price, and then it ends up costing you money anyway. So you might as well just dropped it and then get into their new home and new environment. But you literally got to be really open with them. There's no cloak and daggers. So that's why I quite like the 50-50, because they lose and you lose, if that makes sense. But as I said, Tracy, they're responsible for everything. Vaccinations, it's their dog, literally. When she's in season, that's when we both jointly have that investment. But until then, it's their dog. Obviously, as a breeder, you still support them and help them as you would anybody that you have you've sold a pup to. That doesn't change, but it's their responsibility. We did do terms years ago, and we felt the bitch was barren. She probably wasn't, looking back on everything that I do now, but you need to have that included. What happens if you put the bitch out on terms, you've given them a dog, what happens if she never has pups? Are they expected to buy the dog off of you now at a discounted rate, considering she's a 5-year-old bitch? Do you just write the contract off? So when I say you need to cover all possibilities, you need to cover all possibilities. You also need to think about, well, in the contract, how many litters are agreed? So I think Charlotte just did the 1. I generally do 2. I did do 1 for 1 couple because this bitch, I only had 2 in the litter. And the bitch that I bred, it was her 2nd litter. First litter she had all boys. Her 2nd litter she had 1 girl. So I had to keep this girl to keep my bloodline going. Now it was evident she wasn't show quality. She was a lovely healthy girl, but she wasn't show quality. So I'm quite strict on what I keep here. I say every dog earns their keep. Is basically they should have a purpose. So they're a show dog, they're a stud dog, they're a breeding bitch. You know, every dog has a purpose. And as I say, my dogs, once they're staying, they're staying. So I'm not selling on ex-breed bitches. So I was like, I know she's not show quality, but I need to keep the line. So what they agreed, because they were new into co-ownership, they said, okay, we'll give you half the money, so she only has to have 1 litter. I said, yeah, no, I'm happy with that because I just want to keep the bloodline going. Well, everybody lucked out because this was the bitch that had 11 pups, all surviving. They were rearing the litter, so they really didn't know their arse from their elbow, bless them. Obviously, I give them a lot of support. She self-whelped the first, I think it was 5 or 6. I wasn't scanning then. I think she was actually a New Year's Day mating as well, so she was like made it complex on all levels. But we took her to the vets. We said, no, let's C-section and get the rest out, but we didn't know there was going to be like another 5 in there or whatever. And they really had their work cut out. For 11 on a bulldog, that is real hard work. And needless to say, they set up their own bloodline. They've shown, they've taken dogs to crafts, they've bred their own litters. So that very much was a mentoring role as well, but that was just on one litter, and I could actually carry on my bloodline from them. But yeah, so you need to discuss how many litters, who's rearing the puppies, who's paying for what, and that should all be in this contract that you're both going to sign. Now, years ago, if you had a kennel club dog, they still actually have a loan of bitch agreement. I used to actually fill one of these out and file it with the kennel club, but it isn't actually suitable nowadays for this kind of contract. So personally, I don't file it anymore. Everybody signs it. I keep in regular contact with those people, so that's why I'm saying it's important. You find out their purpose and you keep tabs on them, because the last thing you want to do is put a bitch out on terms and they disappear and you never see them again, because then effectively they've got a free dog and you've lost all the benefits of having a bitch on terms. So you need to stay in contact with them regularly, which I guess for Shannon works really well because she's made that commitment to that dog as well. But yeah, problems you need to think about. What if the bitch is barren, never has a litter? What happens then? What happens if she has litters but there's non-viable pups, because there's still vet bills to pay? I think when I do, they get every third. How do I do it? Oh, I can't remember. But basically, for me, if there's only 1 or no pups, I personally foot the bill, because if I was breeding dogs myself, that I would have to foot the bill anyway. I don't feel it's fair someone to be out of pocket for that kind of stuff. But you need to cover all eventualities. So I'm happy to, if anyone messages me and says they want to see a copy of mine, I'm happy to send you a copy. But as I say, it's very much just the bones of, you need to make it specific to you. But any questions? No, yeah, Tracy's all good. That's good. Right, so that was my little bit about co-ownership, my own dogs, why it may be of benefit to you, just all the considerations you need to make if you're going to go down that route so you don't get burnt, all right? But that's it. If there's no more questions, I've definitely yabbited on enough this time, God knows how long. But if you're on my mailing list, then obviously you're going to find out about worm counting tomorrow. Please like and share this even after I've finished, just to spread the word that I'm doing this regularly. I do normally say if you have any questions, message me, but I'm going to stop saying that because I can't keep up with the messages. So if you have questions, then ask on the lives. If you have something that's a bit personal, then you can message me and I'll sort of bring it up anonymously and talk about it in a live. So you can message, but just don't expect an automatic response straight away, because it's not going to happen. Next week, don't forget, it's Selling Pups at Christmas. Going to cover Jill's great stuff that she sent me, also my stuff. There are no right or wrongs to these things. You're the breeder, you decide. Otherwise, subscribe, like and share. See you next week.